Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz have scored major legal victories in their ongoing dispute with Fano, the company that promoted their highly publicized boxing match in 2024. The two MMA veterans, known for their toughness inside and outside the cage, found themselves in a prolonged legal battle after claiming that Fano failed to pay the fight purses they were contractually owed following their bout. According to reports, both Masvidal and Diaz filed separate lawsuits against the promotion, asserting that they never received the full amounts promised in their fight agreements. After months of legal proceedings, each fighter's case was taken before an independent arbitrator, and both rulings have now come down decisively in their favor. In Masvidal's case, the arbitrator ruled that Fano must pay the former BMF champion a total of $5.3 million, compensating him for the unpaid purse and related damages. Meanwhile, Nate Diaz's case brought an even larger award. The arbitrator in Diaz's proceeding ordered Fano to pay him $6 million, in addition to an extra $500,000 that must be paid personally by Fano's founder, Solomon Engel. These rulings represent a significant vindication for both fighters, who have maintained that the promotion failed to honor its contractual obligations after using their names and drawing power to generate substantial pay-per-view revenue. At this stage, the only remaining step is for a federal judge to formally approve the arbitrator's rulings. Sources close to the matter have indicated that the approval process is largely procedural, and it is expected that the court will confirm the decisions in favor of the fighters. Once finalized, the rulings will legally compel Fano and its executives to issue the payments to both Masvidal and Diaz. This outcome not only highlights the importance of fighter rights and contractual accountability in combat sports but also reinforces the growing trend of athletes asserting greater control over their financial and promotional dealings. Masvidal and Diaz, both known for their outspoken personalities and strong stance on fighter pay, have once again demonstrated that they are not afraid to fight for what they are owed, inside or outside the ring. With the court's approval seemingly imminent, it appears that both men are set to receive their long-overdue compensation, marking a decisive end to a contentious chapter in their post-UFC careers and a clear message to promoters about the consequences of breaching fighter contracts. Dan Hooker recently offered high praise for Islam Makhachev following the lightweight champion's bold decision to move up to the welterweight division. Speaking candidly, Hooker acknowledged the magnitude of such a challenge and commended Makhachev for embracing it. He highlighted that moving up a weight class to face an elite contender like Jack Della Maddalena is no small feat, emphasizing that it takes exceptional confidence and courage to test oneself in a new division. Credit to him for stepping up to the plate and moving up in weight, Hooker said. That's something that even the greatest lightweight of all time, Khabib Nurmagomedov, never attempted. Becoming a two-division champion is one of the hardest things to achieve in this sport, and Islam deserves respect for chasing that kind of legacy. Hooker's words reflect the widespread admiration Makhachev has earned across the MMA community. The reigning lightweight champion has dominated his division, defending his belt with precision and skill. Now, by choosing to take on the challenge of a heavier, stronger opponent in Maddalena, Makhachev has shown he's not content to simply defend his throne. He wants to make history. Hooker acknowledged the physical and mental demands that come with such a move. Competing at welterweight means facing opponents with greater size and power, and maintaining speed and endurance becomes even more critical. Yet, Makhachev's willingness to pursue this test underscores his ambition and belief in his abilities. It's a huge ask, Hooker added. But if anyone can make it work, it's someone with Islam's discipline and fight IQ. While Hooker himself has faced Makhachev in the past, his remarks carried no animosity, only respect for what Makhachev is attempting. The New Zealander's perspective adds credibility to the growing sentiment that Makhachev is not only one of the best lightweights in the world but also one of the most daring champions in the UFC today. Hooker's comments serve as a reminder that greatness in combat sports often comes from taking risks, pushing boundaries, and pursuing challenges that others avoid. Whether Makhachev succeeds in his quest to conquer a second division remains to be seen, but his decision to move up already places him in the conversation among the most ambitious fighters in modern MMA. By stepping into the welterweight division, Islam Makhachev isn't just defending a legacy, he's expanding it, and even his former opponents are recognizing the magnitude of that pursuit. UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira recently fired back at Magomed Ankalaev over the Russian fighter's claims that he had been dealing with a rib injury leading up to their bout. In a fiery interview, Pereira downplayed Ankalaev's explanation, suggesting that injuries are simply part of the fight game and that every fighter, including himself, steps into the octagon with some level of physical damage. Pereira made it clear that he has fought through far worse conditions than what Ankalaev described, emphasizing his toughness and commitment to competition. "I've always been injured," Pereira said. "It's all the same to me." Now Ankalaev is talking about a broken rib or whatever he had, but if he saw the injuries I'm fighting through right now, he wouldn't even want to come back and fight again. The Brazilian powerhouse didn't stop there. He went on to challenge Ankalaev directly, implying that the Russian's comments were an excuse for his recent loss. "If he knew what I'm dealing with, he'd probably question what he's even doing in this organization," Pereira added. "He'd quit, man. I'm not even going to talk too much about it, but I'll bet him, I'll show him my medical results. Let's compare what I've got versus what he's got. I doubt he's ever dealt with the kind of things I've fought through." Pereira's statement underscores his reputation as one of the toughest and most determined athletes in the UFC. Known for his relentless work ethic and warrior mentality, Poatan has consistently shown a willingness to fight under difficult circumstances. His comments reflect not just pride but also a message to fellow fighters that true champions find a way to perform regardless of the pain or setbacks they face. Injuries are an inevitable part of mixed martial arts, but Pereira's attitude highlights the difference between those who use them as an excuse and those who push forward regardless. By publicly calling out Ankalaev, Pereira is not only defending his performance but also reinforcing the mindset that defines elite fighters: mental toughness and resilience above all else. As fans await what's next for the reigning champion, one thing is certain: Alex Pereira's intensity and no-excuses mentality continue to set him apart. His message to Ankalaev was loud and clear: injuries or not, champions show up, fight hard, and never hide behind excuses. UFC President Dana White has officially confirmed the removal of multiple fighters from the organization's roster following the recent UFC Rio event. According to reports from Sherdog's Tom Feely, 4 fighters have been released due to a combination of poor performances, disciplinary issues, and extended layoffs. The decision reflects the UFC's ongoing commitment to maintaining a highly competitive roster and rewarding consistent performance inside the octagon. The first name on the list is Irene Alexia, who was cut after suffering her 3rd consecutive loss this past weekend. Her most recent defeat brought her UFC record to 1-3, marking a difficult stretch in her career. The move came as little surprise to fans and analysts, given her struggles with both consistency and discipline. UFC bantamweight Jana Santos reacted sharply to the news on social media, writing, "How do you fail a weigh-in, lose 90% of your fights, and get busted for PEDs in just 4 appearances? A blunt reminder of how unforgiving the UFC's standards can be." Next on the list is Andre Muniz, who was finished in the first round by Edmund Shabazian at UFC 320 earlier this month. Once considered a rising contender, Muniz's recent form has been disappointing, as he's now 1-4 in his last 5 fights, with his most recent victory dating back to 2023. His release signals that the promotion is moving forward with a younger and more active middleweight lineup. Justin Tafa was also among those released, following a botched weight cut ahead of the UFC Perth card. The heavyweight contender was forced to withdraw from the event and has since decided to take some time away from mixed martial arts. While the UFC has not ruled out a potential return for Tafa in the future, his release suggests that the organization expects higher professionalism and consistency from its athletes, particularly when it comes to making weight and maintaining readiness to compete. Finally, Brogan Walker was released after her 3rd straight loss, which came against Veronica Hardy on the UFC 320 card. The defeat marked the end of a difficult comeback for Walker, who returned to the octagon after a 2.5-year layoff but was unable to regain her previous momentum. The UFC's latest roster cuts underscore the promotion's ongoing effort to refresh its talent pool and maintain the highest standards of performance and professionalism. With new prospects constantly emerging, the organization continues to evolve, making room for fighters who can consistently deliver at the elite level of the sport. UFC welterweight contender Garry recently shared his thoughts on the upcoming showdown between Islam Makhachev and Jack Della Maddalena, JDM, confidently predicting that the Australian striker will dominate Makhachev in the stand-up exchanges. Speaking on the Ariel Helwani show, Garry analyzed the matchup in detail, breaking down what he believes will be the key factors in determining the outcome when the two face off in New York next month. Garry acknowledged that Makhachev has developed into a well-rounded fighter who is capable of holding his own on the feet, even though his wrestling and grappling remain his strongest weapons. Islam has proven that he can strike, Garry said. He's more than capable of standing with top-level opponents, but let's be honest, his bread and butter will always be his grappling. That's where he's world-class, and that's where he'll look to take the fight. However, Garry believes that when it comes purely to striking, Makhachev will struggle to keep pace with Jack Della Maddalena, one of the sharpest and most technical boxers in the division. Jack is just cleaner, sharper, and more dangerous on the feet, Garry explained. If the fight stays standing, I think Jack dominates. The question is whether he can keep it there. The Irish contender went on to point out that the fight will ultimately hinge on JDM's ability to defend Makhachev's relentless takedown attempts. The real test is going to be when Islam grabs hold of Jack, Garry continued. How much has Jack improved in that area? Because Islam has been wrestling his whole life, and he's probably the best in the world at imposing that pressure. If Jack can stuff those takedowns like he did against Belal Muhammad, then he's got a real chance. He did a phenomenal job against Belal, but this is a different level. Islam is cleaner, more technical, and relentless. Garry made it clear that he believes JDM has the tools to pull off the upset. If Jack can stop the takedowns consistently for 5 rounds, I think he wins cleanly. He's just too good on the feet. As for Garry himself, he's preparing for his own crucial bout against Belal Muhammad in Qatar. A win there could position him as the next title contender, potentially setting up a future clash with the winner of Makhachev versus Della Maddalena. A fight that could redefine the landscape of the welterweight division.